I want you to picture something. You're a wildlife researcher. You're deep in the rainforests of Borneo. It's 2016. And you're watching a mother orangutan do something that nobody on your team has a scientific explanation for. She is carrying her dead infant. She has been carrying it for 8 days. She grooms it. She holds it against her chest. She won't put it down. And when one of your colleagues tries to document it on camera, you notice something. Nobody on the team is speaking because nobody knows what to say. Now here's the question that has haunted researchers ever since that day. Did that orangutan know her baby was gone forever? And did she somewhere in that ancient, intelligent mind understand that the same fate was waiting for her? I'm going to be honest with you. When I started researching this video, I thought the answer was going to be simple. It is not simple. What scientists have discovered about elephants, about crows, about your dog, and about creatures you would never expect is going to stay with you long after this video ends. So don't go anywhere. Because the most surprising part? It's not the elephants. It's not even the crows. It's something that lives in your house. Before we get into the animals, I need to give you one piece of context, because without it, this whole conversation falls apart. When scientists talk about death awareness, they don't just mean the animal ran away because it was scared. Running away from danger is survival instinct. Every creature on Earth has that, even a beetle. What researchers are actually asking is something much deeper. They're asking, does this animal understand that death is permanent, inevitable, and coming for everyone, including itself? To test that, they use 4 specific markers. Think of it like a checklist. Does the animal understand that all times, living things die, not just enemies, not just prey, but friends, family, itself? That's called time's universality. Does it understand that death times cannot be reversed? Times that a dead companion is not sleeping, not hiding, not coming back? That's time's irreversibility. Does it recognize that a dead body times no longer works? Times no breathing, no movement, no response? That's time's non-functionality. And does it understand times what causes? Times death, danger, injury, illness? That's time's causality. For most of human history, we assumed only we could check all 4 boxes. Then we started actually studying animals. And what we found, starting with the largest land animal on Earth, cracked that assumption wide open. Let me tell you what Cynthia Moss saw. Cynthia is a wildlife biologist who spent more than 40 years, times her entire career, living among elephant herds in Amboseli, Kenya. She has seen thousands of hours of elephant behavior. And she says nothing prepared her for what elephants do when one of their own dies. They don't leave. The herd stops moving. They approach the body. They touch it slowly, carefully with the tips of their trunks. The older elephants move the younger ones back, like adults keeping children away from something too difficult to process. And then they stand there, in silence, together. That alone is remarkable. But here's the part that genuinely stopped researchers in their tracks. Elephants come times back. Months later, sometimes years later, they will return to the exact spot where a family member died, find the bones and handle them, pick up the skull, pass it between each other, examine it with a gentleness that, if you saw it on video, you would swear was deliberate. And they only do this for their own kind. Put the bones of a buffalo or a zebra in front of an elephant herd, nothing. Put the bones of a deceased family member there and they will stop and engage every single time. Researchers at the University of Sussex connected this to something even more fascinating. Elephants are one of the very few animals on Earth that recognize themselves in mirrors. They see their own reflection and understand, that is me. And here's why that matters. The ability to recognize yourself as an individual is considered by cognitive scientists to be the very foundation of understanding that times you, specifically, will one day not exist. They know they're alive, which means they may well know they can die. Now you might be thinking, okay, but elephants are enormous, long-lived, highly social animals. Of course they're complex. Fair. So let me bring it closer to home. I want to ask you something personal. Have you ever come home after a long trip and your dog acted like you came back from the dead? That overwhelming, desperate, almost frantic greeting? Or have you ever seen a dog go quiet after losing a companion? Stop eating, sit by the door, Wait for someone who isn't coming back? That's not nothing. And science is finally catching up to what pet owners have always quietly suspected. Dr. Mark Bekoff, a cognitive ethologist at the University of Colorado who has studied animal emotions for decades, says we've been asking the wrong question. He argues it doesn't matter whether a dog can philosophically contemplate mortality. What matters is this: do they experience the loss of someone they love? And on that question, the data is overwhelming. Dogs who lose a companion, human or animal, show a cluster of behavioral changes that are clinically identical to human grief. Disrupted sleep, reduced appetite, anxiety, searching behavior, walking to spots where the companion used to be, over and over, as if expecting to find them. Cats do the same, so do horses. Horses have been filmed pawing at the ground beside a fallen herd mate and vocalizing in ways that researchers have never recorded under any other condition. There's even a story, and this one is hard to shake, of a Skye Terrier named Greyfriars Bobby in 19th century Edinburgh, who by all accounts of the time stayed beside his owner's grave for times 14 years, times until his own death. Whether every detail of that story survives historical scrutiny, it has endured for over 150 years because it captures something true, something that dog owners across the world recognize without needing a study to confirm it. These animals feel the weight of absence. They feel the presence of death, even when they can't name it. But nothing, and I mean nothing in my research, prepared me for what comes next. Because the animal I'm about to tell you about doesn't just grieve. It time studies death, deliberately, systematically, with a level of intelligence that made researchers genuinely uncomfortable. Okay, stay with me here, because this one requires your full attention. In 2015, Dr. Kaylee Swift, a wildlife biologist at the University of Washington, set out to understand something that field researchers had noticed for years but never formally studied. When a crow dies, other crows gather around the body. Not one or two, sometimes times dozens. They land in the surrounding trees. They go silent. They watch. They don't eat. They don't call. They don't fight. They just observe. Dr. Swift wanted to know why. So she ran a controlled experiment. She wore a mask, and while crows could see her, she held a dead crow. Then she documented what happened. The crows didn't just gather. They times remembered her face. For weeks afterward, crows who witnessed the event would scold that specific masked face on sight, alarming other birds, diving aggressively, treating that face as a known threat. They were passing information about danger through their community, triggered by witnessing a death. Think about what that means. These crows weren't just grieving. They were running in time's investigation. Who caused this? How did it happen? Could it happen to me? How do I protect everyone around me from the same fate? That is not a reflex. That is not programming. That is a mind processing mortality and drawing conclusions from it. Dr. Swift described it plainly. The crow gatherings function as both an emotional response and a time survival lesson times, and the two might not be as separate as we think. Now, if a crow can do that, what about animals we've dismissed entirely? The ones we've always assumed are too simple, too small, too primitive to feel anything close to this. Get ready, because the last section of this video is the one that actually kept me up at night. Let's talk about a fish. Specifically, a cichlid, a small freshwater fish. Not exactly the animal you'd expect to show up in a conversation about death awareness. But researchers observing cichlid fish documented something that didn't fit their models. When a companion fish died, the surviving cichlid didn't just swim away, it stayed close to the body. It nudged it. It reduced its interaction with every other fish in the environment, withdrawing, going still for a measurable period afterward. Is that grief? Is that confusion? Is that biological attachment misfiring? We genuinely don't know, but here's what makes it impossible to dismiss. The behavior only happened when a companion died, not when a stranger died, not when a predator appeared, only when someone familiar was gone. And then there are the bees. When a honeybee is dying from injury, from poison, it does something that biologists have described as one of the most quietly extraordinary behaviors in the insect world. It leaves, on its own, away from the hive, away from the colony it has spent its entire short life serving. Biologists call this self-removal behavior, and the leading explanation is that the dying bee is protecting its family. It knows, on some biological level, that its death could introduce disease or simply burden the hive, and so it removes itself. That might not be conscious thought, but it is, in every functional sense, an animal acting on the knowledge that its own death is imminent. And that brings us to the one truth that runs through every single story in this video. From the orangutan in Borneo, to the elephants of Amboseli, to the crow on a tree branch memorizing a face, to a tiny bee walking away from home for the last time. Every living thing is wired to understand, in its own way, that life ends. The difference between us and them might not be that we understand death and they don't. The difference might only be that we can talk about it. So, do animals know they are going to die? Here's where I land after everything I've read, every study I went through for this video. Yes, not all of them, not in the way you and I lie awake at 3 in the morning thinking about it, but yes, in ways that are real, measurable, and impossible to explain away. Elephants return to the bones of their dead and handle them with something that looks, by every observable measure, like reverence. Crows hold gatherings around their fallen and use them to protect the living. Dogs grieve with their whole bodies, and even a bee, in its final hours, makes a choice that only makes sense if something inside it understands what is coming. But here's the thought I can't shake, the one I want to leave you with. We have spent a very long time deciding how to treat animals in farms, in labs, in the wild, in our homes, based on a single foundational assumption. That they don't really know, that they don't really feel it the way we do, that the stakes, for them, are lower. What if that assumption has always been wrong? What if the orangutan who held her baby for 8 days, the elephant who travels miles to touch the skull of her mother, the crow who never forgets the face of the person who threatened her family, what if they've been trying to tell us something this whole time, and we just weren't listening closely enough? I don't have a neat answer. No one does yet. But I think the fact that we're asking this question seriously, scientifically, with data and not just emotion might be one of the most important things happening in biology right now. And I want to know what you think. Have you ever watched an animal, your pet, a wild animal, anything, and felt absolutely certain it understood something it had no business understanding? That it knew something was wrong before you did? That it grieved in a way that shook you? Drop it in the comments. Tell me the story. I'm not asking for likes, I'm genuinely asking, because the answers people leave on videos like this one are sometimes more powerful than the research. And if this video made you see the animals in your life differently, share it with one person who needs to hear it today, because the world treats animals the way it understands them. And right now, understanding is changing. See you in the next one.